I would think that considering there was so many different movies that don't have a release date or do have a release date or a release date is up in the air, from the films that I saw, well, first off, I agree with you on Sentimental Value. That was pretty much the peak of what I saw that I saw at TIFF, and I was like, all right, well, everything's downhill from here.
Hello and welcome to the CineManiax podcast. I'm your host, Chris Reed, editor at Film Festival Today and lead film critic at Hammer to Nail. In this season 2 opening episode, we're going to talk about the 2025 Toronto International Film Festival, or TIFF, at which many of this year's awards contenders screened. It was also the festival's 50th anniversary. Joining me on the show is Rendy Jones, a member of the Critics' Choice Awards, New York Online Film Critics Association, and Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics, whose reviews appear at rendyreviews.com. It's great to have you here, Rendy. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk Tifty with you, Chris.
Woohoo! Tifty, indeed. Tifty. As the pre-screening little shorts reminded us that we should call it Tifty. So what were your favorite films that you saw at TIFF this year?
Some of my favorite films that I had the pleasure of screening during this year's TIFF, or TIFTY, were The Testament of Anne Lee. I can never say her name. Mona Fettsfold's latest epic musical drama religious piece about the Shaky Quakers and how they migrated from Britain to America, where their religion went through different trials and tribulations. Initially, it started on like 70 millimeter until it teetered out and it got switched over to digital, so that was fun. I also loved Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's version of, Frankenstein, starring Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi, and also Hedda, Nia DaCosta's take on Hedda Gabler, but now making her bisexual agent of chaos.
So can you just explain what happened with the 70 millimeter? Was that by design, or did the projection in the Testament of Anne Lee fail?
It failed. It was like a good 20 minutes of the 70 millimeter VistaVision for the press and industry screening, and it failed like 20 minutes in, and they quickly changed it to digital, but my celluloid freak heart sank a little bit that morning.
I'm sure it did. I mean, of course, Mona Fastfold and her husband Brady Corbett, I mean, this is their thing recently, right? With The Brutalist and their big widescreen epic. So that's really too bad.
But I heard they played it at the premiere perfectly, so.
Oh. Yeah, you were the trial run.
Yeah.
So I have 3 films that I want to highlight, though there were many films that I saw that I thought were at least worth mentioning, just really briefly, other than the 3 I'm going to mention. I liked Franz by Agnieszka Holland, Good Boy from Polish director Jan Komasa, Steal Away by Toronto-based director Clement Virgo, and The Tale of Silian by Tamara Kotevska from Macedonia. But the 3 I want to talk about are, in alphabetical order, Amoeba by Siyou Tan, Honey Bunch by directors Dusty Mancinelli and Madeline Sims-Fewer, and Sentimental Value by Joachim Trier. So Amoeba is a film set in Siyou Tan's native Singapore. It's about a group of 4 girls coming of age in a repressive authoritarian society. They form a gang, but the word gang gets them in trouble. One of them, the central character, believes that she sees ghosts in her room, and it's all about sort of developing agency for oneself in a world that likes to deny you that and push conformity. And I thought this film was quite special, and I have an interview with Siyou Tan after our conversation is over. Then Honey Bunch was this pretty nutso film in a way. I don't want to give too much about the plot away in advance, but it's sort of sci-fi horror, but in a lo-fi setting with a wonderful 1970s era production design. It involves some pretty intense scenes of characters possibly replicating themselves or just imagining that they do. Jason Isaacs plays a supporting role. I love that actor, and Grace Glowicki is the central actress, and she was amazing. And then the final film is Sentimental Value, which going into the festival was the one film I really wanted to see. I think it was the big ticket item, stars Renata Rensve and Stellan Skarsgård. And, Joachim Trier did The Worst Person in the World a few years ago, Oscar nominated. And I think this is a very worthy follow-up. It's about primarily a father's relationship to his two daughters, one of whom is an actress. He's a famous film director, so it's set in the world of filmmaking, but it's about so much more. And really, Renata Rensve's performance, I thought, was exceptional. I really think this is a film to see, and I hope that it does well in the fall. Speaking of which films coming out of the festival do you think have a chance of making a splash this year, Rendy?
I would think that, considering there were so many different movies that don't have a release date or do have a release date or a release date is up in the air, from the films that I saw, first off, I agree with you on Sentimental Value. That was pretty much the peak of what I saw that I saw at TIFF, and I was like, all right, well, everything's downhill from here. I would point out Arco, the French animated feature about a boy who time travels via his rainbow suit to the past, but it has a very beautiful retro futuristic art direction. It plays a lot with like environmentalist themes that doesn't feel non-cynical, which is very refreshing. And it has such a sweet, wholesome portrait of young friendship and childhood. And at TIFF, they premiered the English language dub, and it's one of the big contenders for the best animated feature during this year's award season. I would also like to point out Frankenstein, of course, that won the runner-up to the People's Choice at TIFF. And whenever there is a People's Choice winner, this year's winner was Hamnet, or the second runner-up will also get in the Best Picture nominee bracket. Like last year, the winner was The Life of Chuck, but the runner-up was Emilia Perez, which ended up becoming nominated for Best Picture among many other things.
I just want to say, the one film I regret truly, well, actually, I regret not seeing The Testament of Anne Lee. I really wanted to see that. But Hamnet, actually, there are three. I wanted to see Hedda as well, but then Hamnet by Chloe Zhao, which you just mentioned, won the People's Choice Award. I really wanted to see that. But sorry,
did I. That was the one that just was never on my schedule or even had access to get tickets for. So that was a bummer. But hey, it comes out very shortly. I would also like to point out Left-Handed Girl, the new movie from Sean Baker's frequent collaborator, Chi Chin-soo, which is very much like a coming-of-age family portrait of this a Taiwanese family moving back into the working class, and these three generations of women having to come together while there's unspoken, I don't want to say beef, unspoken grievance regarding their relationship amid the air. And the movie was selected to represent Taiwan for Best International Feature during this year's Oscars. And that was a very fun, very breezy, perfectly edited family portrait.
That was not on my radar, so thank you so much for mentioning. And all the other films you talked about were films I either saw or heard of, but thank you. That's great to have that now on my list of things to see. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about TIFFty, about the 50th anniversary of TIFF, or the 2025 Toronto International Film Festival. It was great having you on the show, Rendy. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking TIFFty with you as well, Chris.
Next up, I'd like to share one of the in-person interviews I conducted at this year's TIFF with Siyou Tan, director of Amoeba. Let's begin with an excerpt from my review of the film. With Amoeba, director Siyou Tan makes a powerful debut feature telling the story of a group of teenage girls in Singapore struggling to develop identities of their own within a deeply conservative system. They call themselves a gang, get in trouble for it, and mostly continue to misbehave, though they each choose different paths forward. Informed by great specificity of place, the movie portrays universal experiences of all who have felt like misfits in their own home. So welcome, Siyou Tan, to the CineManiax podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Toronto International Film Festival 2025.
Hi, Chris, and hi, CineManiax podcast.
In the press notes, you talk about your inspirations for this film coming from your own experiences growing up in Singapore. While I understand that this is not an autobiography, what elements from your own life remain in the script?
The film is very personal and started from an extremely personal place. I went to an all-girls school, middle school, and I had a group of friends that were fellow rebels. And the school I went to was also very Chinese style, which is represented in the film. And I would have to say that actually it all is a little bit topsy-turvy. What seems real is fake and fictionalized, and what seems fake is real. Like, for example, the color of your bra had to be white and there were checks on it. That's real, but it feels surreal. Dragging your table into classroom feels like a fake thing, but it's real. I had to do that into my new class. And the things that seem fictionalized, for example, seem real, but were fictionalized were like the cave and the friendship dynamics. The characters became more fictional. They started from kind of like the people I knew, but then they grew. I wanted to make them more multi-dimensional, so I had to think of them as characters in the story in a way, and how they relate to each other, and think about the character relationships.
Your main character, who is Chu Xinyu, sees ghosts in the film, or at least claims that she does. And so I wanted to ask you, Siyou Tan, have you seen ghosts?
Okay, the question is, have I seen ghosts? I have not seen a ghost because they don't appear visibly to me, but I have felt them. And maybe you would think I'm crazy, but I think they exist and I feel them very, very tangibly around me. There was a ghost in my childhood bedroom. It terrorized the bejeebus out of me, and it was a bit of a turning point for me in my life because I remember that I was terrified the first time it happened. But also maybe I like to stay up at night when I was a teenager to chat with friends on IRC. And that's when the ghost appeared the first time, and I told my mother about it, and she told me that there's no such thing in our house. And I don't know, as a child, I wasn't as a child, as a teenager, I felt silenced. I realized I couldn't go to my parents for comfort because they only want to hear the things they want to hear, and if things were unpleasant, there's no mention of it. And there was a moment where then I went to school and my friends were like, "What's up? What's wrong?" And I was like, I think it's a ghost in my room. And everyone chimed in, everyone came to help me with all sorts of things like prayer cards and chants and everything. And several friends also were like, "Oh yes, I've seen a ghost before too." So that was like the first encounter, and the ghost stayed in my room. And actually, I have to share that I feel a sense of affirmation because last year, my younger sisters were just casually mentioning, "Oh yeah, I remember the ghost in your room." And I was like, "You knew about the ghost in my room?" So everyone knew about the ghost in my room, but nobody talked about it.
So, Chu Xinyu also, since I just mentioned her as the main character, she delivers this really beautiful speech at the end of the movie asking, "How do we get out of this aquarium?" referring to Singapore or the community in which she lives as an aquarium. Is that how you saw Singapore growing up, as sort of this enclosed, hermetic society?
Mm-hmm. As a teenager, I don't think I could articulate it in any way. It was just a feeling I felt of. It was a very stifling environment, I think. I felt that I couldn't be myself. And of course, it's also my family circumstances. My parents are very, very strict. It so happened that the schools I went to were very strict. And I felt the need to hide myself a lot. And didn't feel very free. So I think now that I'm an adult and I live in the United States, looking back, I do feel that Singapore is hermetically sealed. And it's a little bit narrow-minded in a sense that it's a small, relatively wealthy country that has been controlled very much by the powers, and people are not even aware of how much control they are subjected to. So I think that's the thing I feel, it's a bit of a carrot and a stick thing, it's like you're given a certain amount of standard of living and a comfortable life, but what do you give up in return for that?
I understand. Do you say that the country has changed at all since the time of your adolescence or what you represent in the film? Has there been any differences then and now?
Cosmetically, Singapore changes very, very, very rapidly. Like buildings 20 years old being demolished, new buildings taller and, more modern. So those things have changed, and kind of when I go back to Singapore, it keeps changing. It's very surreal. Like the places that I remember are not there anymore. And in a way, but underneath that, I think the psychology psychology of it has not really changed. But I'm just going to speak more to kind of like teenage growing up kind of thing, because that was, I lived there until I was like 17. And through the casting process, I spoke to many young people. And I feel that the pressures are very much the same. Pressures from school, from parents, from society expecting you to be a certain way, expecting you to grow up to be a responsible adult, have a job, and, you know, buy a place, get married, have children. It's like all the same things. And in a way, even though they have social media, they can express themselves a little bit more, I think they feel the pressure more than me even, you know, because the country has just gotten taller and more stressful. At least when I was growing up, there was a little bit more mess involved.
So I love your cast. They're really very strong. You've got Renice, is that how you pronounce her name? Renice Tay in the lead, then Nicole Lee Wen, Lim Xian, and Genevieve Tan, not to mention Jack Cao, who's a well-known face. They all do such a great job. Can you describe how you went through this process of casting?
Yeah, so casting, I love casting. I think casting is very important, especially for this film. I think when I went into it, I thought that the cast is the most important thing in the film. You need to believe the characters, you need to believe their chemistry, you need to believe they're a group of friends. So we started really early, like 8 months before shoot. And I worked with a casting director, Charmaine, who was with me on a previous short film. And after working with her on the short film, we became friends and we had the same taste. And I was so happy that she came to be the casting director. And we did traditional casting on like boards and Telegram and all of that. We went street casting, we tried to go to schools, we did all sorts of nonsense to dig around, you know. And I had an idea that I would like to cast actual 16-year-olds, but that proved very difficult because the range of 16 to 19, people are in an age of exams, and casting them means casting their parents, and the parents were not very willing for them to do something as frivolous as a film. And I think they didn't understand, most of them didn't understand what a feature film entails. It's not a short film. It's not like you show up for 2 hours and you go home. After a couple of weeks, we realized that let's seriously consider people older, in their 20s, and let's consider the people who have a little bit of experience. So like Renice and Genevieve came from theatre. It's their first screen experience. And Nicole and Shi-an are screen actors. They've done some short films, some editorial and things, but this is all their first feature film. And yeah, and our casting was fun, and we called them back in groups and we did a lot of improv games. The first round, I also asked them to do self-tapes where it was nothing about acting. It's just, I just want to get to know them. It's important, you know, because with actors that are less, I guess, screen trained, I think they bring a lot of themselves into the character too. So I kind of wanted to get to know them a little bit as well.
That makes a lot of sense, especially the casting of adult age actors, because otherwise you do have to cast the family. You'll be happy to know, at least from my perspective, that they believably look as if they're in high school. I don't know if you had to change their hair at all so they look more like teenage girls.
Yeah, not for them to look like teenage girls, because luckily they look really young. Like when we photographed them, we were like, what? They actually look 15, 16. But Genevieve had long hair, and I asked her if she would be willing to cut her hair, and she did it. She chopped off her hair was long until the end of the back, and she did it.
Wow. Well, good for you and good for her. How about Jack Cao?
Jack Cao was a dream cast for me. Yeah, I love Ho Xiaoxian films. The way I approached the uncle character in terms of casting was that he had to be a little bit mythical, you know, a little bit unreachable in a way, mysterious. And so I was always secretly hoping that it could be someone like Jack Cao or Anthony Wong from Hong Kong, you know, these gangsters of the screen that's their persona. And so we tried looking in Singapore and Malaysia, and one day I maybe mentioned to my producer, and he was like, let's try. And I was like, oh, no way. So we tried. We reached out to Jack through a Taiwanese producer, and he was open. We spoke on Zoom. It was very surreal. And then he was like, yeah, I want to do it. If we can work out the dates, I'm coming. And it was very surreal because he appeared, and before that, you know, it was kind of like me and the girls. And then Jack appeared and he's like, okay, time to button up our shirts and get our act together. No, just kidding. But he was so generous and so nice and so cool. I felt that it was kind of a nice, fun thing to have in the middle of the shoot as well.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that casting coup.
Thank you.
So we talked about ghosts a moment ago, and I'm wondering your choice of opening with that somewhat degraded video, right? And then we cut to sort of a more traditionally beautiful shot after that. What led you to want to start your movie with this scene that might lead us to believe, oh, we're watching a found footage movie, right? And then we see that we're not. We're watching something else. So why did you want to start that way?
So the opening was a big question in the edit. And I have to say that in the script, the first scene has always been the ghost. The way we shot it though, when we pieced it together in the assembly, the footage that we shot on the Alexa just didn't feel right to start the film. And so then we started going in the direction of starting with the school. But I felt that I didn't want to start the film in this very cold and detached way. I want you to feel that maybe there's something underneath this, because when you watch the film, you'll see it's like kind of military style even, it's like girls shot depersonalized kind of thing. So then the camcorder footage was something that I really wanted to play with a lot. So actually we had 4 different camcorders, and the night vision black and white infrared camera, I felt that when we watched it, it has such a special quality. It's mysterious. You don't know what you're seeing. It's a bit scary, but if you think about it, it's just 2 girls in a room and they're just filming themselves. And it's about seeing, and it's about not seeing, but knowing it's there. And it's about kind of this frisson between the 2 of them. And in a way, it's a bit also about desire, and how desire is something that you cannot see, but you can feel as well. And because the way we structured the film, the scene where this footage happens is kind of the middle of the film, and it became a little bit of, that was the secret of the film in a way. It's not the point of the film, but it's the secret of the film. And I felt that I wanted to start the film on that tone of mystery and something lurking underneath, but also innocence. Yeah. And let it color your viewing of the school.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned desire, because there's definitely an undercurrent of tension between the girls. It could be desire. You never spell it out, but it could be there, it could not. Speaking of the secret of the film, last question. If you could explain the title, Amoeba.
So the title was one of the first things that started with this project, because it's kind of like a personal thing. When I was growing up in Singapore, so I went to a middle school that was like this Chinese school. I had many friends. We were very rebellious, and the usual pressures and stuff. So we have to take an exam, and me and my 3 friends all went to different high schools. And in the high school that I went to, it was a completely different environment. It was very kind of like English speaking and religious, like very Christian school. And I guess as someone who was struggling with my sexuality, it was a very hostile environment. And I recall very distinctly that I kind of took on, I don't know, one day I was just thinking to myself, I'm an amoeba. Like the amoeba to me represented this, I don't know, ideal of self-sufficiency. And it's also a bit weird. It's alone. It's like swimming in this like blobby water thing. It's a bit like off-putting in a way. So I kind of took on this idea that I was an amoeba. It was a story I told myself, I think, to survive and to be okay in how withdrawn I became. And I guess the film, in a way, for me, became a way to kind of unpack and reflect on why did I call myself an amoeba.
Well, thank you very much for sharing the film with the world and for sharing your story with me. It's been great having you on CineManiax.
Thank you, CineManiax. Thank you, Chris.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I'm grateful to Siyou Tan for the conversation. TIFF was, as always, a lot of fun. If you're curious about any of the films that we discussed on this show, be sure to look for them in theaters or via streamers. You can read my reviews at Film Festival Today or Hammer to Nail. For the CineManiax podcast, I'm Chris Reed. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you at the movies.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just heard, we have a whole universe of podcasts waiting for you. Simply search Dragon Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. You can also explore our full lineup and discover new shows at podbean.com/dragonpodcasts. That's podbean.com/dragonpodcasts.